Hello and welcome to the in-year series of Drishti IAS. I am Pooja, and in today's segment we are going to talk about how the scheduled tribes determined and what is the procedure of listing them into the list, the tribes into the scheduled list, and what is the procedure of removal. And of course, we are also going to use this opportunity in order to talk about scheduled castes as well. So it's going to be a fact-loaded segment along with informative parts and analytical parts. So without further ado, let us move on. And before we move on to directly the news, these are the main components. From the perspective of GS mains paper, second, you have to pay attention as sociology students as well. So what is the current news? On September 14, the Ministry with respect to Tribal Affairs and the Centre have listed certain scheduled tribes into the list, and these come from states such as Himachal Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Chhattisgarh and Uttar Pradesh, because the state is the first point of contact whenever an initiation has to be taken with respect to listing of the tribes in the scheduled list. 6 tribal communities of Assam by the name of Adivasi, Chutia, Koch, Rajbongshi, Matak, Moran and Taiyahum. These particular tribes were very adamant on getting a status because they were facing inordinate delays with respect to the constitutional reservation. And this particular move has come in the time where we could see a huge uprising of such tribes. Moving ahead, let us talk about the other part of the news, which tribes have been listed. The Hatti tribe in the Transgiri area of Sirmaur district of Himachal Pradesh, they have got into the list. Apart from that, Nari Koravan and Kurivekaran of Tamil Nadu. Also, the Bhinjia community of Chhattisgarh. The Gond community in certain districts of Uttar Pradesh has also gotten into the list. Now, you must be thinking we think, were reflecting in certain lists. Yes, they were either of the OBC list or in the scheduled caste list they were earlier reflecting. But now they have been listed in the tribes. And certain tribal spellings are also going to change because no confusion is needed whenever reservation will be given. So that is also going to be undertaken. Now, as I told you, we are going to use this opportunity to discuss the scheduled castes as well. Who are these scheduled castes? These are the castes or races in the country that suffer from extreme social, educational and economic backwardness because of the age-old tradition or age-old, you can say, infliction of untouchability. Because of this, because of the process or systemic approach towards these races in the form of untouchability, they were lacking in many infrastructure, such as economic infrastructure was not provided to them, social infrastructure for betterment of their personalities was also not provided to them. Now, because of this, what happened? They suffered geographical isolation. They used to live differently and in a distant region from the so-called upper caste. So because of that, what happened? They were not able to grow. Now, because of the same reason, special consideration is needed to safeguard their interest in the current constitutional practice. And we have to know that only marginalized Hindu communities are deemed to be scheduled caste. And of course, other than the Hindu community, I am talking about the community in which scheduled castes are stated so under the Sikhism as well and also the Buddhism. Those are also included. But if any scheduled caste claims to be a scheduled caste under any other religion other than Hinduism, Sikhism or Buddhism, they will not be provided the status. To know more about it, I am going to provide you a link in the description box with respect to this only because this is under a presidential order of 1950. You need to know more about it. So we have had a discussion on this as well. Moving ahead, let us talk about the origin of the word scheduled caste. When did it came into the picture in the Indian Constitution? It can be traced back to the Government of India Act 1935, in which Part 14 of the Act provided for scheduled caste, for the term scheduled caste. And you can see this is the Government of India Order of 1936 in which scheduled caste has been explicitly mentioned. Not only that, the listing of the different communities as caste were also provided in this particular order. So origin, remember, Moving ahead, if we talk about the current population as according to the census of 2011, the highest number of scheduled caste is in Uttar Pradesh. It is followed by West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and in the last we have the state of Bihar. Apart from that, let's talk about the scheduled tribes. Who are scheduled tribes and how are they different? Just know about it. These tribes are the native people of the land. It means we all know India became a nation after the coming of many other communities and tribes. So when they came into India, they found the people who were living in India in that geographical region since a really long period of time, and that is why they are called Adivasis or the original inhabitants. They are the earliest settlers in the Indian peninsula. There is a set of characteristic feature that defines the scheduled tribes through which you can differentiate them with respect to scheduled castes. Their way of living is very primitive in nature, not developed well enough so that we can call them civilized. Geographical isolation, they do not live in a proper region where intermingling could be done, and they live in such areas such as forests, caves, dens, or in another upper parts of the world also, something like that also happens. So they are seeing geographical isolation. Apart from that, they are also shy. That means they do not want to mingle with the so-called civilized community. So that is also one of the points. Social, educational, and economic backwardness is the most principal feature of this tribe. Okay, moving ahead, let's talk about another very important point. There is 705 ethnic group which is listed as scheduled tribe. Under which article? Remember the article's name as well. Under article 342. 342 deals with scheduled tribes only. Okay, and now these 705 ethnic groups, they include over 10 crore Indians who are notified as scheduled tribes, and that means 1.04 crore people live in urban areas. Most of them live in rural areas. Okay, and 8.6% of the population they make up, of which 11.3% they live in the rural region. Moving ahead, let us talk about another very important point with respect to the percentage of population, the number of population of scheduled tribes in different Indian states. As according to the census of 2011, Madhya Pradesh stands first, then we have Odisha, after that Maharashtra, Rajasthan, and then Chhattisgarh. Remember this. Moving ahead to the next important point, if we talk about the origin of the term scheduled tribe. Now the origin of the term scheduled tribe first appeared in the Indian Constitution of India, in which according to Article 366 Clause 25 it was mentioned that any tribe or tribal communities or a part of such tribal communities, if they are deemed so under Article 342, they will be known as scheduled tribes. Okay, so 342 is the main article we have to be concerned with respect to scheduled tribes. There are many constitutional provisions and articles and laws which help us to understand why our constitution wanted to uplift these particular castes and tribes, because Article 17 talked about the abolition of untouchability, the age-old practice in India. Article 15 Clause 4 talks about the special provision to be made for the advancement of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, weaker sections. Article 16 Clause 4A talks about reservation in manners of services under the state or the central government, and that will be in favor of SCs, STs. Okay, moving ahead to the next topic, that is Article 46. In order to provide the promotion for the weaker section of the society, particularly the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, it is expected of the state to take appropriate steps and measures. Also, if we talk about Article 330 and Article 332, they talk about reservation of seats for the weaker section, that is scheduled caste and tribe, in the House of the People and the legislative assemblies of the state. So political representation is also promised according to the Constitution. According to Article 338, National Commission for Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes were formulated, in which these particular commission had to look out for the welfare and give recommendations to the government to promote their welfare. Alright, so these are the articles you have to be knowing if you want to cite their examples in the mains examination as well as prelims examination. Factual question could be asked. Now if we talk about the fifth schedule deals with the administration of such regions which are mentioned in this schedule, and they are tribal areas, scheduled areas. Then we have the sixth schedule. This also talks about the formulation of administrative autonomous councils for the administration of states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. Now, this particular schedule will talk about all the states which are mentioned as scheduled areas, and this will talk about only Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. Okay, the SC/ST Atrocities Act. This also pertains to the prohibition of any sort of atrocities against the scheduled caste and the tribals as well. The Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act of 2006 gives recognition to the forest rights of the scheduled tribes because they have a very close relationship with the forest for their livelihood and life. So that is why, in order to protect that, this particular act is also there. Now, there are certain criteria for any tribe. Here I am talking about tribes, not caste. Okay. For any tribe to become scheduled, to be listed in the scheduled tribe, what happens? There is certain criteria that we have to look out for. The state government generally looks for its ethnological traits. What is their ethnicity? So that tribes can be classified accordingly. Traditional characteristics. What are they? What kind of customs and traditions are they following that they can be claiming claimed to be scheduled tribes? What is their culture? Is their culture a regular culture like we see for the majority culture, or it is overlapping with the majority culture, or what is the distinction between their culture? If they are geographically isolated or not, that will also be seen. Are they backward, social, economic and education? That will also be recorded. But the judiciary says that we want a foolproof test of the criteria for listing any tribe under the schedule. Why? Because this affinity test is not very foolproof. Why? Because sometimes it can happen, there is a possibility of erasure of the culture of these tribes. As we see that population is growing, the more and more intermingling of scheduled tribes with the regular population, if it is happening, it can have an impact on their culture. So if mixture of culture has happened or their upgradation has happened, now this will become very opposite to the affinity test, and that's not a foolproof test. So the judiciary has ordered the center to develop a foolproof test. Now moving ahead, let us talk about how they are listed under the list, the tribes, or how they are removed. Whenever we are going to talk about the initiative, it's always taken from the state or union territory. If any state wants a tribe which is residing in its state wanted to be listed as the scheduled tribe, so what happens? It will take the initiative or the union territory. Now, according to Article 341 and 342, the final decision lies with the President's office. Of course, he will get a lot of advisory from the state and the center. Then only he can or she can, get ahead with this proper plan. Now, it will come only after, whenever the listing is to be done, it will come into effect only after the President's assent to the bill. Then only it will become, well known that yes, listing can be done. And that will happen by amending the Constitution Scheduled Caste Order of 1950 and the Constitution Scheduled Tribe Order of 1950. So this will be amended. Then only a bill can be moving forward. And this bill has to be passed by both the houses of the parliament, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Let us look at other intricacies. Now, a government, in order to recommend, may choose to recommend by its own for the addition of subtraction of people from the list, tribes from the list of SCs or STs, and this is based on their discretion. That means this can be done through their initiative itself, and such thing has happened in the case of Hatti community in Himachal Pradesh. Okay, and the state government sends the proposal to the Union Ministry of Tribal Affairs. The Union Ministry of Tribal Affairs will examine the proposal and deliberate upon it. Then it will be, of course, going to the Registrar General of India. Okay, if approval has been given from the side of the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, it will be sent to the Registrar General of India. And after this, the Registrar General of India has approved it. It will be sent to the Commission for Scheduled Caste in case of the listing under the scheduled caste, and for scheduled tribes when it has to be for the tribes. And then the union government will get the bill after the approval and it will introduce it in the cabinet for final proposal. So this is the way. Okay. Now let us look at the question for practice and do comment correctly. The Debar Commission, constituted in 1973, is related to which of the following? Okay, so you have to answer it correctly. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. Stay updated.